They laughed at him, mocked his silence, judged his dusty boots, his youth, his quiet eyes. What they didn't know was that they were laughing in the face of power? A power that would soon shake the very ground they stood on. This isn't just a story of respect earned, it's a reminder: never mistake humility for weakness, because sometimes the man you're underestimating is already your leader. The sun was just starting to rise over the airport. It was quiet, peaceful, and cold inside the terminal. Ibrahim Traore waited calmly near gate 37. He didn't wear a suit, he didn't have bodyguards, he didn't carry anything flashy. To most people, he looked like just another African traveler. But this man was not ordinary. He was Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. He preferred to travel like this, humble, private, and quiet. No cameras, no loud announcements. That's how he moved. He believed in being with the people, blending in, staying grounded. His return from a diplomatic meeting in Europe was no different. He had finished important talks, discussed matters of gold sovereignty and Africa's future, but now all he wanted was to get home. As he walked toward the Air France flight bound for Ouagadougou, he greeted one of the airport workers in French with a warm smile. Bonjour, ça va? The worker smiled back, unaware of who he truly was. That's how Traore liked it. He boarded the plane quietly, nodded politely at the flight crew, and took his seat in business class, right away near the window. No one noticed, no one cared, or so he thought. A few rows behind him, whispers. A senior French businessman, the CEO of a major energy company, was heading to Burkina Faso, expecting the usual VIP treatment: red carpets, champagne, and first-class everything. But at the boarding gate, the airline staff informed him that business class was already full. The CEO, not accustomed to hearing no, became agitated. Surrounded by assistants and staff, he tapped his polished shoes impatiently, declaring himself a strategic partner in many African projects. In his mind, rules didn't apply. He demanded a seat upgrade. Airline staff scrambled, whispering frantically, but business class was indeed full. To fix the problem, they summoned a senior flight attendant, Claire, tall, white, dressed crisply in Air France uniform, her cold smile betraying the tension she carried. She stepped into the cabin, scanning with sharp eyes until her gaze landed on a dark-skinned man in seat 2A, quiet, in a hoodie, reading his phone. No assistant, no flashy watch, no obvious sign of power. She whispered to another attendant, probably a mistake, before approaching with forced politeness. "Monsieur, may I see your boarding pass?" The man, Ibrahim Traore, calmly handed it over. Everything checked out, but still, Claire returned moments later with a thinly veiled request. "Would you mind relocating to economy to accommodate another guest?" The insult was wrapped in silk, but cut like a knife. "And why me?" he asked, voice steady. "Just a small adjustment for our guest," she replied. "A guest more important than me." Silence. He simply replied, "No, I will remain in my seat." Claire was stunned. A man like him saying no on her shift. She insisted again, this time colder. Traore remained still, unshaken. Around them, other passengers began to sense something wrong, their eyes peeking from behind newspapers and laptops. Claire hurried off, whispering to the cockpit. She returned, then oddly began targeting other black passengers, asking them to move instead. That was her second mistake. Traore watched in silence, not angry, focused. When she tried to move a confused young African man next, Traore stood up. "Enough," he said, voice calm yet commanding. "You are making decisions based on skin, not tickets." "That is discrimination." Claire's voice faltered. "Please, don't cause a scene," but the power in his eyes silenced her. She walked off, muttering under her breath, "These people, always making noise." Eventually, the CEO was brought on board, greeted like royalty. Champagne flowed, towels were offered, and Claire fussed over him. Meanwhile, Traore fastened his seatbelt and tapped the armrest silent, patient. Knowing this story was not yet done, mid-flight, Claire offered him water with a stiff smile. No apology, no respect. She laughed at the CEO's jokes as he arrogantly spoke of bringing order to chaos in Burkina Faso, unaware the man he insulted sat just a rows away. An African nurse whispered to her neighbor, "That's our president." They don't even know who they're humiliating, but still, no one said a word. Traore didn't want attention, he just waited. As the plane descended into Ouagadougou, the morning sun painted the city below in gold. Outside the cabin windows, something extraordinary appeared. Rows of military vehicles, black SUVs, and a presidential escort forming on the tarmac. Claire peeked out, confused. The CEO smirked, assuming it was for him. "Told you," he whispered smugly. But when the plane stopped, a tall officer in a black beret boarded, his boots echoing as he approached seat 2A. With a perfect salute, he said, "Monsieur President, welcome home." The cabin froze. Claire's face turned pale. The CEO's smile vanished. Traore rose slowly, calm, dignified. The officer turned to Claire and the CEO. "You two will come with us." "You are being detained for questioning," Claire stammered. "Why me?" The officer's reply cut through the air. "You publicly disrespected the head of state on national soil. That is a serious offense." Outside, a cheering crowd awaited the president. Cameras flashed, ministers saluted. The nation had witnessed its leader return, not as a ruler above them, but as a man who had walked among them quietly. And those who had judged him now faced consequences. Claire and the CEO were led away in handcuffs, their arrogance crushed under the unforgiving sun of Burkina Faso. In the silence of those black SUVs, they tasted what justice feels like when dignity is defended. Inside the terminal, President Traore addressed the press calm, not vengeful. "In Burkina Faso, we don't judge a man by his skin or his clothes. We judge by respect, by humanity. This is the new Africa." The story exploded online, footage leaked. The CEO's face, panicked and powerless, circulated on screens across continents. Hashtags trended. #RespectAfrica, #IST, and with Burkina. The French embassy called, tried to intervene, but Traore stood firm. This is not a colony. It is a sovereign nation. At the Ministry of Justice, Claire and the CEO were formally charged. The courtroom heard Claire sob, "I didn't know who he was." And the investigator replied coldly, "You didn't need to know. You only had to treat him like a human being." Air France scrambled, issued a clumsy apology. Too late. African nations united in protest. Claire remained in detention. The CEO faced legal action. Meanwhile, Traore returned quietly to his duties, building roads, training youth, strengthening his country. He never gloated, he never mocked them, but the world had learned a lesson that would echo for generations. Never underestimate the power of humility or the strength of a quiet man.